Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Community America Credit Union. I'm Joel Goldberg, and today I do have a baseball guest, although actually one that I had sort of been eyeballing. He didn't know this for a long time because I talk so much about entrepreneurship and leadership and creativity and all these different things, culture. And my guest today is, I feel like, had every job in the world. He also happened to pitch in the big leagues. 3 different stints with the Atlanta Braves, 1 stint with the Kansas City Royals, another with the Los Angeles Dodgers, which means that via Australia, he came over to the United States and pitched over the course of 12 seasons. People ask me all the time, who's your favorite guy of all time? And that's hard to do. I mean, that's like I could ask Peter Moylan, who's your favorite teammate of all time? And he might have one, but then you sit there and think, well, there's hundreds of others too. And so for me, the 2 best guys I've ever dealt with, among the many, are Alex Gordon. I mean, I covered him 13 years. I've been in the business 26. And Eric Hosmer was the best leader I was ever around. But I've always found that there are these under-the-radar guys, oftentimes the bullpen pitchers, that you don't see them or talk to them every single day. I mean, they would tell you only talk to them when they screw something up. But those are the personalities. Those are the guys that are under the radar and doing all the things. And I could come up with a list of hundreds of guys like that just were so much fun to be around. And one of them is my guest today. He's down in, I believe he's probably down in Atlanta, Georgia, where he makes his home. I don't think he went back to Australia after doing a doubleheader of baseball yesterday. Peter Moylan, one of my favorites because it was always an entertaining interview. How are you, Pete?
I'm awesome, Joel. So good to see you, man. It's strange to see you like this, but it's really good to see you. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time. I think the last time we were in Atlanta, I messaged you saying, hey, we wanted to have you on the pregame show. And you said, well, I'm in Paris right now. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, we'll get a less pretty face than Jeff Francoeur to join us instead. But I'm not the least bit surprised that you went into broadcasting because you know the game well. You have the personality. You're not afraid of the cameras. How much have you enjoyed that transition?
I loved it. I really. It was a lot less. There was a lot less training involved than I was expecting. Just to run through my first day, we had a production meeting at 4 p.m. and I was live on the air at 6:30 that night. So it was basically, they basically just said, do whatever you want to do, be yourself, show us your personality, and have some fun. And I get to talk about baseball, which I love. And there's always a subject to talk about in this game. So I am never going to be without content.
Well, no, that's the beauty of the game, right? And it doesn't have to be. I mean, that's what I love about it is that there are new stories every single day. Some are good, some are bad, but there's always a story to tell among the different players or whoever's involved. And I reached out to you in part because you had one of the, and I think it went viral. You had one of the best explanations of what's going on with the grips and pitching and foreign substances on the baseball. It's typically not something I would cover on this show, which is as much about business and leadership. And before I get into your whole career path, which is a fascinating one, I just want to talk about this and push back on a couple of things if I'm allowed, even though I couldn't throw a ball more than 50 miles an hour.
100%.
40.
Yeah.
But all right, so for people that don't know, baseball this week has said no more sticky substances, and it's been going on since the beginning of time. To grip the baseball, people don't necessarily understand that those slick baseballs, especially if it's not humid out and it's really dry, are really hard to control. The problem is that a lot of pitchers took it too far, and they're using substances that were never meant for this, most notably something called spider tack. You think about getting caught in a web. I mean, this stuff is meant to lift boulders for power lifters or whatever it is. but you have pushed back to say, wait a minute, you can't just do all of this. This really messes up pitchers. So give me your take, your version of why this is bad.
Well, the core, at its core, Joel, is the fact that nobody's talking about the why guys. Look, there's always been cheating in this game. We're never going to escape it. But what I'm saying is they're not asking themselves the question, which is why did guys who normally wouldn't use anything have to go and start to use something over the course of the last 5 or 8 years? Now, I'm in a rare position where I pitched from 2006 to 2018. And the amount of changes in the baseball that I've witnessed firsthand since 2010 to now has been ridiculous. And there's been no escaping it. There's been no denying it from MLB. They've even come out and said that we've changed the baseball. We've done this and that. Now, what eventually happens is those changes have effects. And the effect was that the ball became so slick, it became like trying to throw a baseball in April 1st or September 30th in Toronto or in New York or Philly or somewhere where it's freezing. That was my experience every single day. It was like trying to throw a slick, freezing cold baseball in the middle of July. Didn't matter how much sweat I got, didn't matter how much whatever I got. So eventually I had to resort to going and using something, sunscreen and rosin. And it's as simple as that, sunscreen and rosin. You can go back and look at every video of every time that I've pitched from the time that I was with the Dodgers until now, and you can notice me sliding down my arm and grabbing a little bit of tack from my fingertips, which I would then put on the ball to give that ball a slight little bit of tack, and then I would feel comfortable throwing all my pitches, whether it was a fastball, whether it was a slider, whether it was a changeup. The issue that they're going to have now is that they've outlawed everything, and there's zero consistency in the way that each baseball is being rubbed up from a club perspective on a daily basis. So I can go to Atlanta and I can have a baseball that's brown, and I can go to San Francisco and I can have a baseball that's an off cream color. So you don't know what you're going to get on any given day.
I think there just has to be a happy medium. I mean, and so, these balls are rubbed up. I saw in the video that you did for Valley Sports South, which is the home of the Braves, that, it's different in different ballparks. It might be a clubhouse guy this day. I know that in Kansas City, it's the same guy that rubs up every one of these baseballs. He's the locker room attendant for the umpires, but that's a little bit more. So I think he's known as being one of the best. But the point is you don't know. And then go on, Pete.
Well, that's fine in Kansas City. You get a consistent ball in Kansas City, but then when you go to Chicago the next day, what happens then? And then when you go to Detroit the next day, what happens then? That's my point. Is that the umpires used to do it, and they used to do it rigorously. But when you give it to a guy, I'm not calling any clubhouse attendant out. They are the backbone of Major League Baseball, and I love every single one of them. But they've been given a duty that doesn't exactly fit their job description. And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But they're not going to put the amount of care in it that I would if I was like, you know what, these balls need to be rubbed up because this is the only difference between a guy being able to throw a breaking ball or not. They don't care about that. They're like, oh, just get this done. Just get this done as quick as I can.
The problem is that we have, and there's always a Pandoras box to everything we do. So, we want more offense. I know you pitchers don't like that, but we all like more offense. I love a good pitcher's duel, by the way. I love a good 1-0 game, not just because it gets me home quicker. It's old school. Yeah. What I don't love is just everybody swinging for the fences, everybody striking out. It's a boring game to watch. You know that. But the Pandora's box was that the information that we have now. Well, I could get a better spin rate. I could, with a launch angle, I can hit more home runs. And so it just leads to this and this. And this baseball is really the one to blame on this because they just turn their back on everything until suddenly it's boom, here we go. Here's my issue is that I've talked, and I know not everybody's going to be honest with me. They don't have to be honest with me. But I've talked to a number of Royals players and pitchers that say, hey, bring it on. I haven't been doing anything. I'm more than happy to level the playing field. So you got a lot of pitchers that'll say, good on them. There has to be a happy medium, I guess, right? I mean, I don't feel any sympathy. I don't feel any sympathy for the guys that just took it too far and were taking this. It wasn't illegal, by the way. They weren't breaking the law, but they became better pitchers because of it. Yeah.
So that's the thing. They become pitchers that they weren't naturally.
Right.
That's and just like steroids, right? It enhanced what you could have been, but it wasn't what you would have without it. So I understand that. And that's where I'm with you at the same time. But Joel, my point is that the whole reason for me, I threw from 2006 to 2010, 11 with just the sweat and rosin that they're wanting us to use right now. And I had no issues with grip whatsoever. None. It wasn't until they changed the baseball and forced me to then look for other ways to grip the same baseball that I've been throwing for the last 4 or 5 years, because it had changed. There was no penetration in the leather. I was unable to get anything but that slick surface on that baseball, short of scuffing it on something or hoping that someone hit it into the dirt. I had to go and get some level of tackiness on my fingers. Otherwise, there was a game, I remember it like it was yesterday. There was a game in Cleveland in September. I think it was 2017. But I went out there and I legitimately threw 14 straight sinkers in a row because I could not grip my slider. And I ended up giving up a run. I ended up giving a double off the wall to Perez. But there's no more helpless feeling out there than knowing that you've got one pitch. And this isn't going to affect fastballs. The thing this is going to affect, it is going to affect four-seam fastballs at the top of the zone. It's not going to affect velocity is what I mean to say. So the biggest effect this is going to have is those big spin rate fastballs at the top, which cause people to pop balls up or swing and miss. And the breaking balls that are the basic tunnel opposite of that goes straight down, which has been the theme of every single pitcher over the last 3 years, Joel. So teams have been searching for these guys with high spin rates, signing guys with high spin rates, but they've been getting these spin rates with false pretense. So teams are going to have to reevaluate now and go, well, what have we got? And all the old guys that have been replaced, they can't come back, Joel.
Wow, it's a fascinating thing, and we could go really deep into this. I mean, I was mesmerized last night watching the Dodgers and Padres, one, because it's been a phenomenal series, and two, you're watching a guy that never walks anybody that suddenly walks three in the first couple of innings, and he's looking at his fingers, and it's like, so I get the whole like, hey, we're in the middle of a season, how can you make it happen? Same time, there was a bit of a yellow flag that went up to start the season saying, hey, this might be coming, and then a couple of weeks ago, it was like, okay, we're letting you know we're about to pull you over in 2 weeks, so get all the stuff out of your system. I know easier said than done. You could get hurt and all that. Okay, I just want to get your takes. I thought that you had one of the best takes that I've heard on it, and I do think there's a happy medium to find here. And maybe that happy medium is sunscreen and and rosin, and I something that isn't going to make you have a better spin rate.
I think the solution is going to be what they use in Japan or Korea, or maybe both. Is it's sort of it's a spray that they spray on every baseball, and it gives it that surface, that tackiness. And because it's not like we throw these balls 200 times. Sometimes you can throw a baseball once and it gets fouled up. So there has to be a consistency on data, because you go through 250, 300 baseballs in a game.
Yeah, I like that. That makes sense. Okay, so this podcast, you and I haven't talked a whole lot, but this podcast is as much about business. And I thought about you as I've been doing this podcast the last 3 or 4 years, because I do interview anything from CEOs to a lot of entrepreneurs that are trying to find that big thing. And I remember you rattled it off once in one of the TV interviews that we did. Can you, off the top of your head, rattle off all the non-baseball jobs that you had?
Yeah, I worked at Burger King. I worked as a car detailer. I worked as a Flick pest control salesman. So I would sell commercial pest controls to companies. I then was a Secom security salesman and worked there for 3 months and never sold one security system. I then moved on to lift chairs. From lift chairs, I went to upholstery fabric. From upholstery fabric, I went to work in a warehouse for a buddy. So all my sales jobs are there. But before that, I was into laboring. I do pool, plumbing, concreting, basically anything I can do to put some money on the table. But yeah, I've done as much as you could possibly think about doing.
So a kid growing up in Australia, was the dream to play baseball?
Yeah. When I figured out what baseball was, absolutely. That was my goal. And when I was released the first time, I thought I'd squandered any opportunity that I had, but I was so lucky, and still to this day, consider myself one of the luckiest. Well, I just stole that from a very famous speech, but I do really consider myself really, really lucky, because I've seen so many guys in my situation that have just been left in the minor leagues, and it's I'm so proud and I'm so happy of the relationship with Dayton, because he's given me 2 shots at this. Dayton and JJ Picola, they gave me my start in Atlanta, and they gave me my start in Kansas City.
Yeah, the Royals general manager and the assistant general manager, Dayton Moore and JJ Piccolo. But I think that this is one of the things that I love. And one of the reasons why I started speaking to groups and companies is that there are more lessons in baseball than any other sport, in my opinion. One, because it's every day. You have to answer it every single day. And if you have a bad day today, then you got to come back and do it again tomorrow. it's a big picture thing, right? You have your ruts, you have your slumps. Pitchers have slumps, by the way, too. We just never talk about it as a slump. You ever notice that?
You know what's crazy is that, so I retired, right? Had no idea what I was going to do. I retired. I ran away from that retirement by going and playing in Europe. I spent a season in the Czech Republic playing baseball, thinking that I was still a chance. But I also wanted to keep myself ready for the potential Olympic Games, which never ended up happening. But I went through some hard times trying to work out and figure out what I was going to do. And I think what the hard times stemmed from was not having somewhere to go. That routine that I had for 15 years is gone. And it was such an eye-opening experience for me that I started doubting myself. I started doubting because I had nothing to do. And I was just, I got in that situation where I was like, you cannot take a day off. This is your living, and this is what they expect you to do, and you need to show up and you need to be there, exactly like you said. And then when I didn't have that, I struggled for a couple of months. But fortunately, I was contacted by media, and then I ended up getting a couple other things that I was able to wrap my head around. But it's that lack of direction once you finish. And I knew that I was going to have to do something because I wasn't that guy that made $50 million. I made league minimum effectively every year for my whole career. So I knew that there was something that I was going to have to do. So that pressure, knowing that I had just spent 15 years in baseball and I was going to have to find something else to do, not knowing that I was eventually going to stay in baseball. I thought about coaching, but the jobs aren't there like they used to be. Like you could effectively finish playing baseball and just find a coach's job back in the day. It's not the same anymore. They're looking for qualified guys that know analytics, that know this and know that. You can't just be a guy that used to play and show up and get a job.
It's interesting. I mean, if you had told me when you were with the Royals for your couple seasons that you'd be a broadcaster, I would have bought it in a heartbeat just because of your comfort level. I mean, you have that too. Like you have something that I think most of us, not just people on TV, would love is that confidence and that willingness to not take yourself too seriously,
right?
Yet always took your job seriously. Like it's, we talk so much about the cut-ups, the goofball types in the bullpen, which you have, not everybody, but you have to have some of those guys in there to keep it loose because you're just sitting out there all day. But when it's go time, it's go time.
Yeah.
And people don't know all the behind the scenes work and everything that, goes into preparing to pitch that day and going all out on your arm. But I wanted to get back to just, having all of those jobs, because this is something that I see, and even that being a little bit lost once you retired. And this is the life of an entrepreneur. This is the life of someone that is hoping something sticks. They want to make it. They're putting their heart into it too. There's a certain resilience to that, right? I mean, we talk so much about the superstars in baseball, but it's those guys that are making the league minimum. And of course, it's not a bad league minimum, but you're not making the millions and millions people think. How much did that background, that survival mode that you had to handle for so many years as you're pursuing your dream, how much did that help you?
Great question. Two-part answer. The grinding and having to sign a minor league deal every year, I got used to that real quick. And that's something else that I pride myself on is the ability to, and nothing teaches you resilience like going out and giving up 4 runs and having the phone ring the next day and having to go out and do exactly the same thing and try not to give up 4 runs. It's that short memory, that's that short mentality. It's that bounce back, leave it in the past sort of let's just move on mentality that I've always had. And that Roger McDowell, from the very minute I stepped on a baseball field, taught me. It's like, you cannot dwell. You look at what happened, you focus on it, you learn from it, and you've got to move on, dude. There's nothing you can do. You can't change it. So that helped me no end to start off with. But yeah, having to show up at spring training, and that's why as the contracts moved to later signings and guys were sort of, spring training would start and guys wouldn't sign. And it happened to me. I had to sign late with Kansas City both times. It took away my advantage. My advantage was getting into the clubhouse and getting guys to know me and getting coaches to know me. And just, they knew what I could do on the field. That wasn't going to change. I was going to be a sinker slider guy that would get ground balls against right-handed hitters. I was that guy from the minute I got here to the minute it ended. It was just proving that was valuable enough, and that the intangibles off the field were going to make what I did on the field even better.
There's so much there, though. I mean, it's still all about, but it's all about relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be really good to not care about the like you have to be at such a level that they'll put up with you to not be able to focus on building those relationships and that trust, right?
Yeah. The rapport thing is just something that I've always. My dad was in sales too, so my dad's always been. He's put it to me that hey, you never burn a bridge. You never know when you're going to need help from someone, or someone. Just be there for people. Help them when they need it. Offer it if they don't need it. That's the kind of thing that. And I wasn't like I was in the clubhouse asking people if they needed help. I was just keeping the mood light and trying to let people know that no matter what goes on, it's still a game, guys.
Yeah. So I ask all of my guests 3 baseball themed questions, but they're usually not baseball people. So, it's usually about their business or their life. And a lot of times I warn them, but I didn't warn you because I knew it'd be better if I didn't warn you. So here, the first question is, what's the biggest home run that you've hit? And it usually pertains to business or, hey, this deal or this, revelation. I did look up, I think you had like 7 or 8 plate appearances. I know none of them. You can't expect a reliever to hit a home run. It would have been pretty unbelievable. So what's the biggest home run that you've hit in life? It doesn't have to be on the baseball field.
I think
not marrying your wife either. I know that's a good.
Nope. Having a kid, marrying a wife, none of that sort of stuff. That goes without saying. I think my biggest home run that I ever hit was turning myself from the sideshow that was the pharmaceutical rep that signed with the Braves and turning that into a 13-year Major League Baseball career. And continuing to be able to stay around the game as an Australian, talking about a game that I didn't grow up playing, that I wasn't raised on, that I feel, and that's my biggest thing, is that I've turned something that wasn't natural for me into something that is completely natural.
Completely natural, and natural on TV too. I mean, I see the clips that are on. You guys are working around the same time as us, I mean, I work with. I'm doing the same show you're doing.
You are
every single day. So I think I have a decent judge of what's good, and you're killing it, which is awesome. Again, I'm not surprised. The second question, again, this could be a hitter if you wanted to, but it could be off the field. I ask all of my guests, what's the biggest swing and miss you've taken, and what did you learn from it?
Wow.
I mean, it could be a big strikeout you've had, I suppose, but that's probably not as exciting.
There's been a couple of financial decisions that I've made that I kind of wish I hadn't, but I won't go into too many details. Because even when I've done stuff like that, I'll talk about it. Okay, so I have a coffee shop in Australia, in Melbourne, that I'm partnered with my best friend, and we started 3 years ago. And it was a struggle, not so much for me, but for him, and trying to stay there and be there for him as much as I could from 10,000 miles away over here. And then COVID hit. So it was just the constant battle that he went through and that we were going through during COVID, and it just feels like we're at the other. So even the swings and misses that I took, I guess what I'm trying to say is, even the swings and misses that I had, I still was able to get something from it. I still either learned something from it, or okay, you know how when you go to buy a house, you buy your first house, you think you know everything that you want to do, right? You think you know everything you want. Man, I want a flat backyard, I want this, I want that, whatever it is. You've got a list of things that must have. And you move into that house, and 3 months later, you're like, man, I wish we had this, and this, right? So every time I do something, and every time something backfires, I still grab something from it, and I still make sure that I can learn something from it and then take it with me for the rest of my journey.
Love that. And then the last baseball themed question, I wrote a book about this, I'm going to send it to you, is small ball. Then the Royals one was small ball. They couldn't pay for all the big time home run hitters, the bunts, the sacrifices, the stolen bases, the defense, the bullpen. So that, to me, small ball, those are the little things you do in life that lead to the big wins. What is small ball to you? Same
thing. Absolutely. But I take it, as soon as you said that, I went to, this is going to sound corny as well, but we built a fixer-upper house, right? And small ball to me is getting your hands dirty and getting in and doing stuff that you can do rather than relying on other people to do it for you.
That's good. I like it.
Quite easy that I could sit there and just call someone and say, hey, come do this, do this, do this, do this. Mm-hmm. But I'm enjoying getting in there and doing it myself, figuring it out first. And if I can't do it, then fine, I'll ask for help. But I want to, that's small ball to me.
I break stuff. I break everything. So small ball to me is actually not touching any of that stuff. But I'm not trying to be a prima donna.
That's lesson learned, Joel.
I learned.
See, you learned.
Well, because if I start again, my wife's going to be like, what are you doing this for? You're just going to. 4 final questions as we wrap it up. These will be lighthearted for the most part because they usually are. Not always, but with you, I have to be able to do that. For those that don't see the video version of this that are listening on iTunes, there is a baseball pennant over Peter's left shoulder with Chris Medlin. They were teammates in Atlanta. They were teammates in Kansas City. I think I once asked, I know I once asked Pete in an interview for our pregame show about their relationship, and he started talking about it like it was the dating game, the way that they had built this chemistry. But apparently that is carried over to your left shoulder now.
Yes, it's still, that hasn't gone anywhere. I owe a lot to Chris Medlin. He owes a lot to me as well. He was very young when he first came up, and I'd like to tell people that I showed him the ropes. Any question he had, he'd ask me. But yeah, I wouldn't have got my Kansas City start without Chris Medlin going on the disabled list. So I owe my 2 years in Kansas City, which, by the way, my wife and I still talk about were some of the best years that we ever had around the game, because people in Kansas City are absolutely amazing. But yeah, that's my Chris Medlin pennant.
Well, I mean, we had so much fun with you. Fans loved you out there. So you're an everyday guy. I mean, I believe when you were talking about getting hurt recently with all the sticky stuff, you talked about you got hurt by compensating because you were fat, which I don't think I ever saw you as being fat. You were just a little bit heavier than some of the other guys.
No, I was fat, Joe.
Not like me, but yeah.
I was 250 of soft gelatin in my. I was fat. There was no denying it.
All right. Second question, as we round the bases, you taught me an Australian accent. I'm not good at that kind of stuff, but you made it very easy. And perhaps on that same interview as the Medlin interview, you taught me how to say razor blades, which was very simple. Rise up lides.
Yep.
Right?
You've nailed it. Rise up lides.
Right. Rise up lides. And that's about all I can do. But how much do people screw up the Australian stereotype?
No, it's normally I just get the same thing. It's "G'day, mate," or "That's not a knife, that's a knife." It's a lot of the older guys will do the Paul Hogan thing. But yeah, it's I come from a land down under song that comes for every Australian.
Men at work.
It's Outback Steakhouse references all the time. When people actually try and repeat my accent to me is my favorite, because they always go English. It's one of the hardest accents to get right. And I pride myself on still having it.
You'll never lose that. And I just prided myself on the fact that if I ever go to Australia, I know how to ask for razor blades.
You can shave, but you won't get anything else going.
Yeah, I could shave, but I won't get anything else going. And I personally would go midnight oil over Men at Work.
Peter Garrett.
Yeah. In excess too. That's part of my childhood. He went big time in politics, right?
Yeah.
Very progressive. Well, I mean, all of his songs were always very political and very activist and all of that. Okay, third question. Yeah, thank you. I could still break out a little bit of Midnight Oil. Men at Work to me is more of like a 80s one hit. They weren't a one hit wonder, but you know what I mean, like more of a time period type of thing.
Sure.
And so stereotypical. Okay, third question as we round the bases. What life in the bullpen? There's nothing else like it in the world, is there?
There's not. Kindergarten. I imagine that it's pretty much like kindergarten for most people, because especially to the fifth inning. And if the starter's having a good game and the pitch count's low, then we don't turn it on until at least the seventh, maybe sixth inning. We might start the stretch, but there's that happy zone, and there's certain 15 pitches per inning for the starter is what I would measure. If he gets 15 per inning, that gives us 110. He gets through 7. So you watch the pitch count. If it's up around 50 through 3, then he's doing okay. You know, it's you time when you stretch, you time when you joke, you time when to Red Bull, you time when to Tylenol, you time when to go to the bathroom. There's a lot of things you got to try and maneuver through. It's not just pitching, Joel. There's a lot that goes on out there.
it's fascinating to me, and the best personalities, not everybody, but I mean, some guys are dead serious, but they're going to go through the gauntlet. If they're out there, they're going through it, right?
And that's the you get a young shy guy, or even an old quiet guy, and you think someone like a quiet guy that spent 10 years in the bullpen, he went to war, because there is so many personalities out there that would just try to tear you apart, and I was one of them. And if you fought back, I would go harder. So we're a family. You put us out there on our own for 5, 6, 7 innings at a time. We've got no one to talk to. We've got limited amount of drinks. There's no resupply out there. We can't go back in the dugout. So it's a plan. We are a troop out there.
No doubt. Those guys stick together. I see it every single day. So the last question, the walk-off, now that you're on my side of the world,
yes,
which is a lot of fun. I say all the time, they pay us to talk about baseball, which might not be as fun as playing baseball, but there's also nowhere near the amount of pressure. How easy is broadcasting, and how easy does the game look now?
The game's still hard. It's still in my head that the game's still very, very hard. But the lack of pressure and talking about other people playing it and being able to point out what they should have done is a lot easier than having to do it yourself. But I am thoroughly enjoying it, and I'm learning more about it every single day. But yeah, it's been a smooth transition, and one that I will continue to get better at as I do more of it.
It's the best profession. If you can't be out on the field anymore, well, we still get to be down there some, right? But if you can't be out there performing, this is a pretty good second option, and you shouldn't be getting hurt either doing it.
Well, there's a lot of stairs, but
a lot of stairs.
As long as I can put one foot in front of the other, I should be okay, mate. Yeah.
Got to take care of the voice. Otherwise, that's about it. Hey, Pete, it's great to catch up. Oh, I was going to ask you real quick.
Yeah.
The TNT, AC/DC, what was that like coming in and hearing not oi, but moi,
yeah.
moi?
There's one thing I miss. And I often go back and look at my pictures of myself running in, or I have every single game that I ever threw on my computer now too. So I can go back and remember the good old days. But that adrenaline rush and that feeling and that the mind games you play with yourself too, running in, there's always that little voice in your head. But I'll tell you one thing, and I remember on the broadcast once, I had an okay start to 2016, and there was one game where I said to myself, I said, you know what have you got to lose? Just go out there and just enjoy yourself. How many of these have you got left? And Hud mentioned in the broadcast, as I came running out, that my pace was a lot quicker running into because I'd just sort of mosey on in before that, mosey on in. And that specific day, he picked up on it, and I came sprinting in. And from that point on, that was when I was able to flick the switch and go, okay, dude, look, because from 2012 to 2016, I was all over the place. So I never really found my rhythm again like I did in Kansas City. So that day where I just decided, you know what, take advantage of this, man. You don't know how many you have left. Go for it. From that point on, I had some of the best years I had with Kansas City and in baseball. So sometimes you just got to trick yourself and just say, guys, it's not as bad as you think it is. Give it a go. Just try.
Yeah. What a great message. And I'll tell you this, we give Hud grief all the time, Rex Hudler, but he is the master of picking up on body language. He sees things. He's taught me to do that too. I may not know the game the way you guys do, but you could read a player. That's how I could read the Dodgers pitcher so frustrated last night, not having the sticky stuff. You could see it in the body language. And that's actually a great lesson for everybody in life too. That's a whole nother story. But Pete, it's great seeing you. I'm so happy for your post-baseball success. I'm not surprised, and I hope to catch up with you again soon. But thanks for spending time on the podcast today.
I'd love to do it again anytime, mate. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Peter.